welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be bringing you my first wrap-up of 2020. So the first 3 months of 2020 have been something. So from January to March I read 7 books in total and only 3 rereads. Look at what a colorful pile it makes. And I'm gonna put it back down before I spoil this entire video. You know what, my little children? I can't do this video with you all on my lap. I'm gonna have to set you aside. So the first book I finished for 2020 would be The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi, and I really enjoyed this one. This book is set in an alternative universe where when the Tower of Babel from the biblical story fell, fragments fell to the earth and around them popped up the centers of knowledge and power and culture. And this one particular society, the Order of Babel, popped up to help protect these fragments of the tower. So every couple of years, the knowledge of the location of each fragment is passed between different sectors of the society. So each country has a group of houses that belong to this order, this secret society, and the houses are hereditary, so there's always going to be a patriarch or a matriarch of the house. And the Gilded Wolves in particular revolves around Severin, who is supposed to be the patriarch of one of the great houses, but when the time came for him to assume his throne, he was kicked out of the society and he's trying to figure out why. So he gets together his little gang to try and earn his place back into the house and into the order. And Severin's plan in this book, without giving any spoilers away, is to find a treasure or an artifact valuable enough that he can barter his way into earning his rightful place back in the society. There are definitely other subplots that happen and things go awry, as they usually do in these adventure books, and it's a really nice little fun adventure book. And I'm so excited for the sequel of this book, like insanely excited, because this one is set in Paris, which is all well and good, like Paris is nice, but the sequel is going to be set in late 1900s Imperial Russia. Like, I'm so excited for the book. I'm so excited. I think the one thing I'm not excited about is the cover, which was just meh, but I digress. But yes, this is the first book that I read for 2020. I just went off like a whole bunch of offshoots right there. After The Gilded Wolves, I picked up an oldie but goodie. If you've watched the last couple of wrap-ups I've done on this channel, you'll know that I've been working my way through Leslie Carroll's bibliography when it comes to her historical nonfiction books, that is, and I finally read Royal Pains, A Rogue's Gallery of Brats, Brutes, and Bad Seeds. Whew! I said that without tripping up. The way Leslie Carroll writes is just so entertaining, and this is probably my favorite out of all of her entries because this is just about crappy royals. The title gives it away. It's about the crappiest royals in history, like Vlad the Impaler, and Ivan the Terrible, and King John of England, the one that was made into the lion character in Robin Hood, the animated one. It's just fun to read and you're just like, why were these people given power? The next 2 books that I read in 2020 were both rereads, but they were less of I want comfort, I want to wrap myself up in a warm blanket of a book, and more of I want to read the first books of these series because I plan on reading the sequel soon. And the first book would be The Sisters of Versailles by Sally Christie. This is set during the reign of Louis XV of France. The lovely, wholesome story is there were these 5 sisters, 4 of whom slept with the king. Rereading this, I always wondered to myself, why did it take me so long to read the sequel? This is a topic I really like, and then I reread it and I was like, oh, that's why. I forgot how much I didn't like the writing of this author. Spoiler alert, it doesn't have a happy ending, but there are a lot of books that end tragically. But there's always a part in the book where the characters have this false sense of success and you're really truly happy for them. At one point in their life, they had happiness. This was just like sad sister after evil sister who ended up sad sister, and then they all died. That's not a spoiler. I mean, like, everyone died because they're humans. And the thing was, the selling point of this book was also its downfall, I guess, because you know that 4 out of 5 sisters slept with a king. Like, the first sister thought she found true love with a king. You can't even be happy for the first sister because in your mind you're like, yeah, he's gonna sleep with 3 of your sisters. But the concept of the story is interesting considering this did happen in real life. It would have been such a scandalous, juicy book, but the structure of this book was really off. It was just a sad, sad book. That being said, this is so terrible. I like spent the last 2 minutes crapping on this this book. I do want to read the sequel of this book pretty soon. I want my reread of this book to mean something. If I don't read the sequel, I will have put myself through bad writing for no apparent reason, so I gotta read the sequel. Next reread, and I'm just gonna zoom past this quite quickly because you know this book, I know this book, we all know I know this book, and we all know I can't shut up about this book. And it would be Gemina, the second book in the Illuminae files by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. So I already have the script that I use whenever I bring this book up on my channel. This is a sci-fi book set hundreds of years into the future. It's told in epistolary form, which means it's not the traditional paragraph, word paragraph chapter. In the future, space travel is now a common thing, and these mega corporations rule the world. But this one mega corporation, Biotech, blew up an entire planet, and now they're trying to cover their tracks. But there are these people who survived, and now this whole series is basically one truth seeker passing on the message to another truth seeker. In Gemina, Biotech invades their space station, and they have to protect their home. So it's really Home Alone in space. The last 3 books I read for the first quarter of 2020, you'll be happy to hear are brand new reads. I mean, 3 guesses on when I was able to finish 3 brand new books. The first new book I finished while I was at home would be the Babysitters Coven by Kate Williams. Now, I was sent an advance copy of this by Penguin Random House a couple of months ago. This is very reminiscent of the 90s. Like, I could imagine this book being made into a cheesy 90s movie. That is not an attack on the book. That's what I like about it. It's not my favorite book. I don't know if I'll be picking up the sequel when it comes out, but I love how unabashedly cheesy it is. It owns the cheesy. It owns that it's corny. Now, this is a story about a girl who is a babysitter until she finds out that she's actually a witch, and her new friend is also a witch, and together they form the Babysitters Coven. It's cheesy and it owns it. It's not like these other books that try to be like, ooh, I'm ridiculous, but I'm gonna pretend I don't know how ridiculous I am. This book is literally like, yeah, we're using teddy bears and nail polish and lava lamps to use for spells. We know what we're doing. I would say the problem I had with this book was the pacing. Not a lot happens in like the first 3/4 of the book, and things pick up. Like, you get info dumps and world building towards the last parts of the book, which I think could have been spread out more throughout the book. The protagonist herself is quite forgettable, but the story itself was just fun, and it's a thin read, and it'll take you like 2 seconds to get through it. The next book I read while at home was Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. This is an Evil Queen retelling set in a magical version of China, and I did enjoy this. I really loved it. I was really drawn into the story. It was the first book in a while that I kept thinking about it even after I'd put the book down. Like, I would put it down to eat or to sleep, and I'd be like, I wonder what happens next. So this book did very much capture my attention. It wasn't a perfect book. There were issues I had with it, but all in all, I would give it like an 8 out of 10. So I'm definitely gonna continue with this series, and I'm definitely gonna do a book review of Forest of a Thousand Lanterns. I'm putting this in this video right now for accountability. I am gonna do it, I promise. The very last book I read for the first quarter of 2020, and one that I finished literally last night, would be Empress, The Astonishing Reign of Noor Jahan by Ruby Lal. I loved this book. Oh man. This is set in 1600s India during the Mughal Empire, and this book is a non-fiction. It's a biography of Noor Jahan, and she was the only female to ever be a co-sovereign of the Mughal Empire. I gotta say, when I read about European history, it's the familiar. To read about another period in royal history across the world, I loved it. I loved getting to learn about India in the 17th century. What was the most interesting aspect for me was the only other book I've read set in the Mughal Empire was years ago with a middle grade book about Jahanara, her grand niece. They were on opposing political sides. When I was reading this, I was like, oh wait, this is the villainous grand aunt that Jahanara was talking about in that middle grade book. But in here, Noor Jahan is a heroine. Reading the opposite side of that middle grade book I read as a child was so fascinating. And the way that Ruby Lal writes it, it's so beginner friendly, but it doesn't dumb things down. I think the only problem, because there aren't a lot of records of women back in the Mughal Empire, a lot of it was conjecture. She'll give you a history lesson in general and sort of try to squeeze in her characters in those history lessons without really having confirmation of it ever happening. There are real historical events that are written in this book, but for the most part, it's like a crash course on the Mughal Empire, not necessarily revolving around Noor Jahan, but you still learn so much about that time and place in history. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all the books I read for the first quarter of 2020. I'm gonna see if I can do better for the second quarter. Maybe I'll read 8, which I know is a lot of people's like weekly quota, but but this is a lot for me. So I'm actually proud that I did 7 books this quarter. And that about does it for my wrap up for the first quarter of 2020. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter. I'm at cuckooforbooks. On Instagram, I'm at cuckooforbooks and also at Salva Villarasa. Please subscribe and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys!